All right. So continuing on with the refined paint layer, let's see what we've got so far. I've covered quite a bit of it. It's looking a little demonic. But I want to cover pretty much all of it before then I can play with some finishing and other experiments that digital painting makes possible. So I'm going to keep using this big brush. I'm using it at about 60% opacity. And I'm going to try to cover up some of these areas I've been ignoring. Kind of chiseling it out as I go. Now in all my reference, the top of the forehead at the right has some sort of highlight, right? And I want it to feel kind of fuzzy. And I've got this divot between my eyebrows. You can also maximize the amount of space that was a mistake, that Photoshop is using, just by stretching it. I didn't want to uncouple my tools. And there is a tool that I will show you. It's under Window, and it's called Navigator, which is very helpful for digital painting. So the Navigator will show up in the sidebar here, and it lets you immediately zoom in without having to go to Command plus or Command minus or use the magnifying glass. And once you're zoomed in, you can move around while still on the brush tool. So I'm going to use that now. It will also kind of show it to you. You can make it bigger or smaller. It will show it to you from a distance. So you kind of realize how much more you still have to cover or what you're doing. And you'll notice the one thing you can't change on your custom brush is the hardness, because your custom brush already has hard and soft edges built into it. So you control the hardness. Basically everything is mostly hard-edged with your brush, but the edges of it were soft. So as you blend, that's how you control the edge control with the colors you use and how close they are to each other. And of course your brush size can get you into more detail. But I try to use the largest brush I can for the areas I'm filling. Okay, after this demo, we're going to break it up a little bit. You can still be painting, but we're going to discuss question of the day number 4. And I didn't really think about it, but I'm certain there's a good AI generator out there for making a Muppet out of your photograph. Just like you can make a Hayao Miyazaki version of you, or an anime version of you, or Simpsons version of you, right? But here you get to control it all completely, instead of just being entertained by seeing what you get from a sampling of what's already online. Okay, so what parts have I really been ignoring? The hair, the shirt, the mouth. And in this refined paint layer, you can see why the base color is so important. Because if you don't have something behind it, it takes a lot to build up any meaningful pixels at only 60%. So you could go back to your base paint layer if you need more space or need more areas for painting. And then there are lots of different schools of painting, but in both the Romantic school of painting, French Romantic especially, and in the Post-Impressionist school of painting, the direction of the brush stroke should be tied to the dimensional surface of the thing you're painting. So it's called directional hatching. And so as I render the cheek, I want to think of it as like an apple, and the direction of my brush strokes, especially because they're visible, kind of wraps around that apple. So they're not just going to be like straight marks. They're going to be curved around that surface. And you can see that in the work of Van Gogh. You can see it in the work of Delacroix. And it kind of frees you from having to be super smooth all the time. And yet you're still describing the form. And that approach was very influential to 20th century art movements, even in abstraction like William de Kooning. Yeah, it's getting there. And this happens every semester, but basically my video names for a while are going to be refined painting, more refined painting, still more refined painting. Because you're just building up strokes. Okay, I've totally ignored the sweater. And we got to make something exist first, right? Before we can make it good. Let's go scrub it in. I was going for like a friendly looking Muppet, but this is betraying my inner turmoil. Yeah. It has the edge to it. But that's going to have everything to do with like the eye shape and the glasses on top of that, and like where the shadows are and stuff will affect all of that. All right, remember to hit save every once in a while. Oh yeah, yeah. They're very emotional, right? Very expressive. Which I did want. I want it to be kind of manic in its styling. Now the good old color theory we learned with compositing and doing color balance, having kind of blues and cyans in the shadows, having yellows and reds in the highlights. If you really want to push your color, that's a nice way to do it. If you're going for even believable skin tones, you'll often see green and blues and purples in areas like underneath the eyes, the hollows of the skin. In darker skin tones, there's a lot of orange. There's a lot of green. And then at some point, it's just going to start coming together for you. You just have to have kind of faith in it until that point where you've covered enough of it that it starts to make sense. And hopefully that motivates you to get to kind of a finish for all of it. But if you don't have time for that, which is understandable, as long as you get to the refined paint layer with a textured brush, on some part of it, like work up a finish in some part of it, then you'll be meeting the requirements. I mean, some sort of customized, using, what is it called? Using the brush settings in some way. Yeah, to get the effect you want. Because that shows you the full range of what's possible with digital painting. That's very hard for me to tell sometimes, like what kind of brush you used, and that's not important. What is important is that you feel like you understand how you can get an effect that you desire. If you were to use this technique on your final project or in other work in the future. Students are always amazed at how quickly time goes when they're doing digital painting and how tired it makes them, because it requires a lot of focus to be kind of looking back and forth and making these decisions and working actively, just like it would in a drawing class or a painting class.